Oh, good morning. Today is Friday, April 23rd, Erev Shabbat Parshat Mot-Kedoshim. These parshiyot they deal with a lot of different topics, some general categories about the types of unions that are permitted between individuals. But then alongside of that, lots of other things are packed in here, and some of them are more cryptic than the others, at least in terms of figuring out what the verse is trying to tell us we shouldn't do. And here's one of them that I want to look at this morning. Chapter 19, verse 26, Yud Tet Chavav. Lo tochlu al hadam, lo tenachashu v'lo teonenu. Do not eat on the blood, nor should you use all manner of soothsaying and other types of magic, really is what the Torah is describing there. So what is this verse about? The latter part we understand what's being prohibited to us, all these those magical practices that some cultures allowed for and thrived around. Well, what's the first half of the verse? Don't eat on the blood. So the Rashbam says it's got to be contextually explained. It must fit into this. So what is it that a person's doing? Somehow it involves a degree of sorcery or reaching beyond this world to another world. And so he says, this must be referring to some of the pagan practices. Sheochlim al kever haharug. Very interesting description. They would go and they would eat a meal or eat something at the grave of someone that had been murdered. L'shem machashefut, for the sake of some type of divination and magic, shelo yinakem. By doing so, by having a meal there, you're hoping, and apparently you're involved in having caused this death, you are hoping that this will bring it about that he will not avenge you from beyond the grave. It's really a wild expectation. Firstly, that might be happening at the second level, that this would work, but so it is, and recognizing just how multi-leveled, an act of murder or act of manslaughter might be, and the implications back towards you, even if you did it unintentionally. This is a week when we have been talking about such things, intentional, unintentional, and the complicated questions of responsibility, which have been played out in one court case and are consistently coming up around all these situations that are in the news, at least, of tragic loss of life, sometimes in the hands of law enforcement. So this is a description, it says the Rashbam, of, again, how an individual might reach to the grave of the one whose blood was shed to seek help. The Gemara, on the other hand, offers a whole long list of possible explanations for what else this might mean. I'll read you the Gemara in a moment. This is the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. A list, Lo Tochlu Adam. What would that mean, for example? That you shouldn't eat an animal before its life force has left it. Let's say an animal has been slaughtered and it's still moving about, so we consider that to be a life force. You're not permitted to go ahead and eat the animal while it's in motion. Pretty awful to imagine such a thing, but you can't do that. That's because Lo Tochlu al Hadam, don't eat when the blood is still there. The force is still in it. Or don't eat your sacrificial animal before the blood has been sprinkled, because that was the part of the essential component to bringing a sacrifice, was to sprinkle its blood on the altar, also derived from here. How do you know? Going back to the case of people that were put to death, were died, but in this case put to death by the Beit Din, that the family shouldn't be given the usual meal of consolation that we give to other families, also derived from this verse. How do you know that a Beit Din itself that has to decide to give and to mete out a capital punishment? Minan Sanhedrin shehargu et hanefesh ein toamim klum kol oto hayom. They shouldn't eat a thing the whole day. It's not a time for them to be focused on their own personal well-being in any way. Talmud lomar lo tochlu al adam. Don't eat when blood is being decided upon. So those are a whole variation of various renderings of how you would read this pasuk in a different way. And the last teaching actually becomes the basis for a halacha that seemingly has nothing to do with some of these magical explanations, or putting people to the death penalty, or slaughtered animals at all. But it's actually a halacha that's lived out, in principle, should be lived out every day. And here's the halacha. Here's the other teaching. It's found in the Gemara Brachot. I read as follows: Amar Rabbi Yossi b'Rebbi Chanina mishum Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. My dichtiv. What should we understand from this verse? Lo tochlu al dam. Don't eat on the blood. Lo tochlu kodem shetitpalalu al dimchem. Don't eat before you pray for your very blood. Okay, what does that mean? And apparently that teaching is that you're not allowed to eat, because what you should be doing is recognizing that life is urgent, and issues that we are facing individually and communally, or nationally, or globally, are of such an important nature that you get up in the morning with a sense of urgency. I need to pray to God, and nothing should be taking precedence in terms of my feeding myself and giving myself the nice pleasures of good food before I recognize the importance and desperate need to pray for my well-being, for the well-being of others. And so the halacha is that you're not supposed to eat breakfast before you daven Acharei in the morning. Now, there might be a way in which, once you say a few prayers, even if you don't have the whole service, maybe you can then go ahead and eat Shabbos at the Mot-Kedoshim. We'll leave that for a separate halacha conversation about what you do for that. But that's the core principle. I am pretty careful about this, and I have for most of my adult life. When I had a stomach ulcer that was problematic for a period of time, so I asked a halakhic shaila of one of my teachers, and we talked about the need perhaps to have the chance to eat something for that reason. But in terms of people sort of taking in a good meal while prayers are waiting, that's not what people should do. Which then is an interesting question that we have these days, right? We have a leisurely start to davening right now. Right now we're starting davening mostly at 9:30 in the morning. Sometimes if we have two services back to back in a given facility, the first service might be at 8:30 and the second one at 10:15, 10:30. So it's like very tempting to want to go ahead and eat, and in principle you shouldn't. And so whereas we might focus our attention on, oh, come on, how can you get out of that? And you can have a cup of coffee, you can have a cup of water. That's allowed in the halacha for these, that's permissible to do. The real point isn't, oh, how come I can't eat my food? The real point is, how can I feel the urgency of prayer? And that's not coming easy for a lot of us. The urgency. I've used that word a bunch of times already, but that's what it comes down to. Is prayer something which is just a sweet thing to do, or is it essential and important to be drawn to? Either because we are desperate to get God's help from troubled times, or because on the other hand we want to be able to turn back towards God and feel connection again. And either of those reasons should have us then say, okay, this food can wait, especially since we got quick davenings or relatively quick davenings still happening. I'll get back with enough time because prayer matters. And then when we're at the place where prayer is happening at a given location, or if it's still yet in your living room, to make sure that you engage with the experience of prayer as something of significance, of significant connecting. It's hard. It's hard to do. Our minds are not always in place for that. But that's the call. So with all these other readings, which might have their applications in these unusual circumstances, they're all fine and good. But in the end of the day, the one that stands most important for us each and every day is this last one from the Gemara Brachot. May our prayers feel urgent, and may our prayers be powerful moments of connecting with God, and God with us too. Have a Shabbat Shalom.